it's not your only source of EMF radiation. It's coming from the Wi-Fi. It's coming from the cell phone tower. It's coming from the wireless environment that's in your home. And those AirPods need your phone to be on. The smartwatch needs your phone to be on to work with it, right? So you need to distance yourself from the radiation. That's the best thing you can do.
I gotta get myself a little more faith, a little more love.
I'm your host, Krista Bigler, and I'm going to guess we have at least one thing in common, that we're both in pursuit of a less stressed life. On this show, I'll be interviewing experts and sharing clinical pearls from my years of practice to support high-performing, health-savvy women in pursuit of abundance and a less stressed life. One of my beliefs is that we always have options for getting the results we want, so let's see what's out there together. All right, today on The Less Stressed Life, I have August Brice. She has a passion for finding solutions for mindful living in our digital world. Her online platform, TechWellness, is the only comprehensive online source that addresses all of the challenges of our modern digital world, from EMF radiation and effects of blue light to cybersecurity and mental well-being with tech. On top of her ongoing research, she's built an advisory team consisting of world-renowned experts in each area who consult with TechWellness and review all major content on the site. And all of her things that she's tested, she purchased and tested, never supplied by sponsored manufacturers to avoid any influence or conflict of interest. So welcome, August.
Thank you, Chris. It's so great to be here, and I love your topic.
Oh, you mean the less stressed life?
Yes.
Yeah, that was an accident. I was just looking for a synonym for the word inflammation back in 2017. It's become very serendipitous, and here I am.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, just fully 360'd around the whole topic and all of the modalities of it. I used to find it a frustrating topic almost, where it's so funny how things shift and change. And it's probably because I always say we're aspiring to the less stressed life. Like we have not achieved. We're all in pursuit. That's what we are. We're all in pursuit of a less stressed life.
We've spoken before, and you gave me such amazing advice. So I'm going to tell everybody, listen to this podcast. There'll be more.
We have not really had an episode around the topic of EMFs. Sometimes my clients ask me about EMFs, and I've had some people, I have this very great honor of interviewing experts. And I've had some people, when I've asked certain experts that know a lot about detoxification and body systems, they would say, if your total body burden is very high, EMFs can be very challenging. So I'll be curious your thoughts about this. But really, it's like you're pioneering an area that it didn't have. You had a passion here. So I'd just love to hear, why did you start dedicating your life to this topic?
It started a long time ago when I picked up my first cell phone for Christmas 30 years ago, and I could feel the energy and it didn't feel good. I actually have a video on Instagram. My daughter found this. Did you watch that?
Yeah.
People say, how did you know how to do that? I didn't know how to do that. It was a Christmas present, and it just was in the moment. My husband videotaping because it was such a big present, a new cell phone. And I picked it up and I shuddered, and immediately even had a conversation with my dad, who by training was a nuclear physicist and who told me to be careful of the energy way, way back then. So that part is not on the video that we put on Instagram, but someday I'll put that up somewhere, maybe on YouTube. So that started my quest as to why does it bother me when I'm around these cellular phones? And then it was like, why can I feel the Wi-Fi? How come everyone else can't feel this? And then we wired up everything, because it actually started that way. But then we took our office to all wired, and I felt so much better. So I knew that I had to do research, and I researched. And finally, books came out on the topic. In fact, the first one was written by Dr. George Carlo, and he had done a study because he worked for the cell phone industry and found that indeed this energy could have some pretty drastic effects. And when I told him, wait a minute, for me, it's different. I'm not thinking that I'm going to get cancer. I feel the energy. And he said, it's not magic. It's just that you're sensitive to it. And so that's when I realized, that was probably 15 years ago, that it was EMF sensitivity syndrome. And of course, along the way, like you said, I tried everything to make it go away. And I really find the best thing is to fortify my body. Like you said, avoid inflammation. as much as I can, do all the things that help me relax, help me feel better, and just make my body stronger to go up against this environmental toxin.
We're guinea pigs, right? And we're still, it's one of those things that we don't necessarily want to have to deal with another thing. I think often we don't want to have negativity around things. We're just like, okay, show me the solutions or show me how it's, as you're describing it, you are this sensitive. I was hearing you speak on your Instagram and I was thinking, like, do you resonate with being an empath, right? Where you pick up on people's energies a little bit. I would just be curious if you think that because just the way you talk in this lovely way, it's like there's some people who can just connect with people at different levels,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we all have that empathic power, don't
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
And
That's
it's
true.
just relaxing enough to get to that point
Yeah.
where we do put another person's feelings first. And then
Yeah.
we really can feel it. But as far as feeling things, yes, I've had situations in public where I just want to run over and pull a tablet out of a toddler's hand because I can feel it. I feel what she's feeling and it doesn't feel good, but I resist that. My family says, no, don't do that.
I can't help but think something that comes up a lot is supportive husbands. And I just incidentally met your husband Al
Yeah,
by way of him
yes,
plugging in the microphone for you.
he did. Very
And
supportive.
was he supportive of this or is he like, I don't know what you're talking about? Because it's not a
Well,
tangible thing. People struggle with intangibles.
he's an early adopter of all technology and he loves technology. So along the way, we've actually had a lot of conversations about it. But one really big one was when he developed our Wi-Fi kill switch because I was living in a completely wired environment, feeling awesome in Southern California near the beach where I could take walks on the beach every day. And all of a sudden, I couldn't sit in my TV room with my kids, with my husband, and watch TV without getting this massive headache. And one day he said, oh, come on, sit down and watch. We're watching the show. And I said, I can't. I don't know what's happening, but I get really sick in here. I can't do this. He looked at me. He said, oh, honey, I'm sorry. I got a Wi-Fi and I
Oh, no.
put it behind the TV. I'm like, are you kidding me? And so
And then he really believed you.
oh, yeah. And a few days later, I think he always believed me, but that was like one of those pivotal transitions where, okay, I am going to protect you. I'm going to make sure that whenever you're here, you can switch this off. And so I just switched it off all the time until we got rid of it. But that's why we had the Wi-Fi kill switch. So now that's one of the biggest sellers on our website. And that's so that you can turn your Wi-Fi off anytime without getting near the dangerous, toxic electromagnetic fields. So anyway, yeah, he's been very supportive because he wants me to feel good. Because
Yeah.
when I feel good,
Right.
everything's better.
All right. So this topic, we won't get into all kinds of things about energy medicine unless you want to talk about whatever. But I'd love to hear. Now we have some research coming out around EMFs. There are some, we do
Oh,
have some
yes.
studies. So can you share a little bit about what
Yes.
we know around studies around EMFs as we live through the guinea pig decades of this?
There are literally thousands of really good, peer-reviewed, published studies in very good journals that connect electromagnetic fields, specifically radiofrequency fields are the most studied, to various health effects. And I mean from infertility to cancer and tumors and insomnia and ADHD and autism and cancer. So these are such important studies. You can Google them. You can visit Safe EMR. You can visit my website where every week I pull another study and put that on our research articles. There are studies that were done by our government, a big 5-year study called the National Toxicology Program, sponsored by our own government, which found a clear evidence relating to cell phone radiation and increased incidences of glioma and heart tumors, cancerous, okay? And also DNA damage, clear evidence, but we don't even hear about this, right? You would think that if the government did a study, that following that study and this very important information that came from it, there would be a warning, right? On maybe your cell phone, but that's not the
Yeah.
way it's happening. we have a very strong and prosperous industry. And I think it's going to be really difficult for even the government to come out and say anything, especially because the FCC and the telecommunications industry are a very tight group. And so I don't think that cell phones were created to hurt us. I just think that EMF radiation as a toxin, and now that we've explored all of these research studies, and literally probably once a week, a new study will come out with a very dramatic link. We were talking about stress here. And so there's actually even a stress study. Most of these studies, thankfully, are done on mice and rats, though we have seen the incidence of brain tumors increase dramatically from 2010 to 2017 when we did the last big intake and study of the number of cases. And I think we're going to see that move up and up. But the stress study was done showing that rats, when exposed to a cell phone that was off versus a cell phone that was on, one that was ringing, one that was vibrating, or all three, all had the same reaction, even when the cell phone was just on. And that was increased oxidative stress and other markers for anxiety. So there was a study that came out of Turkey a few years ago, and I called and spoke to the head scientist, Kever Deslin, and she told me, because the study was showing, it was about melatonin, showing how just the EMF alone can prevent the production of healthy melatonin, even in a great environment where it's dark or where all the other melatonin markers are good and everything's going great on these rats. And then all you do is introduce a cell phone, which they put about 20 centimeters from a rat, which she told me that they were trying to mimic and be analogous to a cell phone in a pocket. And so they found that not only was melatonin production disturbed, but also glutathione. And the most fascinating, she said, is when they put the cell phone and turned it on, the rats had very anxious behavior just because the cell phone was turned on, even though the light wasn't facing them.
Interesting. I know I saw one you had shared online from the Journal of Contemporary Dental Practice, which I'm just curious how they decide these things.
The salivary glands, right?
Yeah, they saw that 30 minutes of use of a phone per day increased the nickel that was found in saliva if they were already wearing braces. So there was like leaching happening of that heavy metals. I'm still just starting to dig into it.
Oh, there's so much.
Yeah, I'm just cute. I'm trying to stay cool. No one wants to feel crazy. I always say the simplest thing I always tell people is just unplug your Wi-Fi at least, or you can put it on a timer. You could do a kill switch if that's what you like. Like we all have that option. We can all turn off our Wi-Fi at night.
Right.
Like that's a very simple thing we can all do. I'm actually
when we're
curious.
Not using it. Super easy.
So I'd like to talk about some things that people really think of. We could talk about literature and what's there and all of that. But I know what people really want to know is, how do I figure this stuff out? And you've done a lot of testing on different meters. I have a meter from your company, and talk to us about what you've seen with validity of EMF meters, because there's probably no standard for this. So what have you seen? Do you test them side by side? I don't know. Tell us about these
I love
meters.
that you say that there's no standard, because when I first started doing this, of course, there weren't the wonderful meters that exist today. There were silly meters made from China, but I have actually a video from 2006 or 2007 where I have this one little meter, and it's great because it did point out where the antenna was. And it made noises, so I could tell that something was happening. But now there's great companies like Safe Living Technologies, and all their meters are certified and calibrated to industry standards. Same with Tri-Field meter, calibrated and certified to industry standards of specifications for correct measurements. And that's super important, because I was learning about EMF, but using a meter that wasn't calibrated. And so my measurements meant nothing compared to the actual measurements that they were doing in studies. So it's super important.
Who's the industry that's making the standard?
The electrical industry, the people that measure this, because cell phone manufacturers are held to certain standards and levels that meters like this measure. So there are standards in the industry, and they're certified, and there are third-party certification companies The meter makers just don't certify it themselves.
We're not
And
done
so,
talking about meters, but you make me think
yes.
about, do we have laws around EMF in different states or around cell phone radiation or around
Well,
something?
thankfully, there are organizations like the Environmental Health Trust, Americans for Responsible Technology, that are moving that forward. And so many people, I have a big article, Cell Phone Near Me, Now What Do I Do? Where I've taken the best information from all these different organizations as far as what to say to your city council, as far as what to say to your school when they pop up a cell phone tower that you personally have read research about and know it's probably not a good thing for the kids to be studying under or playing under. And so there are now a couple of school districts in California that have succeeded in having cell phone towers removed. There are a couple of cities that have also succeeded in not having a cell phone tower put in on their street or near them. But these are few and far between, and it's going to take some doing because the industry actually has laws that they can put a tower anywhere, anytime, and all in the name of connectivity and communication.
Yeah. And as humans, we really want to be connected. It really
Yeah.
makes people really, I saw that you went to this Bruno Mars concert in Las Vegas and they took all of your
Yes.
phones away. Or they
It
went,
was,
you had to put them in a locked bag. If you're urinating a lot when you're drinking water, maybe you're not actually hydrating that much, or in other words, getting the fluid and nutrients into the cell. Electrolytes are minerals that help fluid and nutrients get into the cell. I recommend all of my clients start by drinking electrolytes when we begin our work together to improve energy. And then we get even more strategic with our electrolyte recommendations as test results come in. Now, generally, electrolytes are potassium, sodium, and chloride. One of my favorite electrolyte products is Pickleball Cocktail from Jigsaw Health because it's one of the only products you can get with an adequate dose of potassium to meet my recommendations, which is critical for blood sugar, which everyone should care about, hormone health, and digestion. Huge thing for relapsing digestive issues. Jigsaw Health is also maker of the famous adrenal cocktail, made popular by the pro-metabolic corner of the internet and root cause protocol, as well as a multi-mineral electrolyte for recovery called Electrolyte Supreme. You can get a discount on all of Jigsaw's amazing products, including Pickleball, Electrolyte Supreme, and Adrenal Cocktail at jigsawhealth.com with the code LESSSTRESSED10. That's 3 S's, less stressed 10.
yes, yes. And some of the schools actually on their own are doing this mainly for children's mental health and mainly because they're distracting kids. But at the same time, I feel so happy that children are also away from that EMF exposure for the day. So they take their phones in the morning, they lock them up, and they can put them in their locker or put them somewhere else, but they don't take them to their classes with them. And then at the end of the day, they get it unlocked and put back. And that's exactly what Bruno Mars did. As everyone was coming into the concert, you had to leave your phone, which of course I didn't have one with me anyway, but everyone else had to put their phone in a bag. And so we watched the concert and we had Bruno talk to us, probably like he wouldn't talk to us if we all had cell phones pointed at him. And that's what he said. He said, I wanted to have this moment of real presence, of real connection, of all of us doing something together that nobody else got to do with us. And it was really pure and wonderful and fun. And he even wrote a song about it. I took your cell phone away, he sang, and it was actually really super cute. It was
Pretty
great.
funny.
So I've heard now that he does that at all of his concerts. So heads up.
Yeah.
And then I interviewed people afterward, and some people were really upset about it. They said that their lives were so much better when they shared them, that people looked forward to see the fun things that they were going to do, that they wanted to show everyone what a great dancer he was. And then other people said, yeah, I really thought that was awesome. And in fact, I would say more of the younger people thought it was a really good idea. Isn't that
Yeah.
interesting?
Yeah, it
it
is
was good.
interesting. I think this is a whole different topic and a different episode, but something that I'm curious about is
Yeah.
we've talked a lot about our current generations, but I'm curious about this next one that's under me because my generation loves like fulfillment and doing things that they really feel like good about. And I was talking to some family when we were on a ski trip recently, and he said, yeah, that was just your generation. the next generation after that, and we got cut off. So I don't
What is it?
understand all the details around how they apparently, I think like my generation doesn't always want to work somewhere for like forever and ever. I think that's a stereotype
Mhm.
of this. I don't even know the names of the
Mm.
generations. I don't even exactly know which one I'm in. So let's not get too attached to this
Okay.
conversation.
Okay.
Let's go back to
Okay.
EMF meters.
Okay.
But I'm curious about when I think, especially those kids have grown up in that, but I could see
I
them
mean, with
getting
a cell
kind of
phone.
sick. Yeah,
Those
yeah.
kids have grown up with a cell phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm worried about that
Mhm.
actually, because we don't really see the effects for a long time
Oh, yeah.
unless you have the EMF sensitivity, which more and more people have. And I think that more and more people are having the sensitivity like me because they're being exposed more and more. It's
Yeah.
almost you get an allergy to peanut butter, what, after eating it for
Yeah, I mean,
5 years or
this is the
eating it all
conversation
week.
with everything. Before
Mhm.
you, the conversation I was having was like, "Oh, plants are blooming more. Allergies are up because they're eating up all of the carbon dioxide because we have longer
Mm.
growing seasons." And that was a different perspective that I hadn't heard. But you hear that kind of with everything. Like our overall total body burdens are more significant, and I just feel what is stressing your body, and then we got to reduce the stress on the body, right? So you can
There's
happily.
really great research, tons of research on how EMF exposure causes oxidative stress.
Mhm.
And I think that puts you,
Which is
that
basically
primes you.
aging and
Right,
inflammation.
exactly. And obviously, we're electromagnetic beings.
Mhm.
And so we have this electromagnetic field that's man made, that's twisted that beautiful energy from the earth and attached data to it. And so now the waves spin differently, they're polarized. And of course, that's going to have an effect on our bodies. And like you said earlier, turn off the Wi Fi. Don't unplug the Wi Fi, really. Put it on, like you said, either a timer. I love the switch because it allows me to control when the Wi-Fi is on and when it's off. And sometimes it can be off for all weekend long because people just forget to access it because they're enjoying the peace of not being called online, not being drawn to the internet.
Yeah.
But also they might be enjoying the peace that their body's feeling by not being exposed. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in about the oxidative stress. And
Yeah.
I know it impacts so much of our health in so
Yeah.
many different ways.
Okay, so now you have these meters that you like the safe
Yes.
and sound and you like the tri
Yes.
field.
I
And let's talk about some of the fun tests you've done and experiments that you've done that have been shocking for you.
One interesting that I haven't posted yet was I've been noticing that my smartphone is exceeding measurements that I've ever seen before.
Mhm.
And at first I thought,
Same smartphone?
oh, the same smartphone. First, I wasn't really paying attention to my phone because if you know me, I don't really use it that much when wireless is enabled. I use my phone on airplane mode when it's wired to the internet. And that's because I can turn off everything, Bluetooth, Wi Fi, and cell phone signal, and still be connected to every app, still post Instagram and answer questions on Facebook, still visit my website and other people's websites, still look at research, all while having zero exposure to any wireless energy. So I've always been looking at my husband, who, of course, like I said, he's an early adopter. So he always has the latest iPhone. And I'm watching as an iPhone used to give off levels of, when I first started this, maybe 50,000 microwatts per meter squared. And that's on a meter like this. This meter gives us a digital readout. So right now you can see we're under 100. We will be in the moderate zone if we stay under 100. We turn on a cell phone and this goes to extreme, which is a red dot over there, once it hits 1,000 microwatts per meter squared. So that's the base, right? 1,000. I used to see cell phones go starting like at 20,000. Then they went up to 30,000, then 40,000. Lately, I have been not even that close to my husband's cell phone. And I'll say, hey, turn that off. And I'll put the meter up real quick while he's got it on. And it will be over 3 million.
Oh,
Over 3 million.
geez.
This is dramatic. This is wildly extreme exposures. So I'm thinking, wow, what's going on? Then I turn on my cell phone and I'm at an 11. I use an iPhone 11 because it is the last iPhone that you can still get that doesn't have another extra antenna in it called the millimeter wave antenna. And that's a part of the spectrum that we haven't been too exposed to forever, unless we went through an airline X-ray machine, the ones that twist around you. Those are millimeter waves that you're being exposed to. And you've seen, if you've ever looked at the screen, you've seen what they can see. It's like an X-ray. So
This
anyway,
is how my Facebook ads know what I'm thinking. That's it right there.
they're actually really reading your mind.
Yeah.
But anyway, they may be listening to you. They
Yeah,
may be
for
tracking
sure.
you.
For sure. I don't think there's
Anyway,
any other possibility.
so lately, my iPhone 11 has hit over 1 million. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. But I go with my meters, I travel with them wherever I go. And so I'm in countries where there's still only 3G, Spain, to name the country. And guess what? That exact cell phone doesn't go over 200,000. That exact
Interesting.
same cell phone, updated to the latest update. So what it's telling me, it's the infrastructure. It's the network, as they say. So our network has become so, I guess you could call it polluted. You could say it's so busy. It's got all these different transmitters. We've got 4G, which layers 5G on top of it, which means more and more cell phone towers with more and more transmitters or small cells on them, with also millimeter wave transmitters. So we've got just this one part of the spectrum that's just full and full. Maybe we're finding that it's too many different telecom companies fighting for that spectrum, or maybe it's just that the spectrum is so full now, or that the structure is so full that it's pushing all that power to our devices, making our devices even more dangerous.
It would
And
have to
it's
be almost external, because if you have the same device and your device hasn't
right.
changed and it's jumping, of course,
And
right?
so what is causing it? What's causing this power push? I don't know, but it's definitely a power push, and the power is increasing, the power at the device. And so that's one of the things I use my meters for. And I use my meters to find hidden EMF everywhere. So it could
What
be
is
in a
some
refrigerator.
examples?
A refrigerator.
I freaking hate that refrigerators have Wi-Fi. Like, I don't need to operate the refrigerator via Wi-Fi or the wash machine. And I actually don't know. It makes me so angry. I don't know how to shut it off. I need to Google this.
It's actually pretty near impossible without violating the warranty. I asked my refrigerator repairman the same question. First of all, I got the spec sheet. I found the Wi-Fi. That's where you start. And then I asked him to remove it. And he said, I absolutely can't, because for number one, you don't own the refrigerator. I'm leasing this home that I'm in now. And also it's there so that we can decide whether or not we're going to give you something new or whether we're going to make a repair. And he said, pretty soon they won't even need me. They'll just get all the data as to maybe you left the refrigerator open for too long, or maybe you stuffed it too full. They can tell everything from all of the data collection systems and the Wi-Fi that they have inside your refrigerator. This is what he was telling me. So anyway, I was able to put a mesh covering over it. Fortunately, it's in the middle of my refrigerator on the top. So I was able to cover it and block it that way. For my washing machine and dryer, I was able to open the washing machine, identify with the meter that has the arrow on it that I also use, which is a meter made in Germany called Gigahertz Solutions, which I also sell. I love that meter for absolutely pinpointing antennas. And remember, every antenna is your strongest EMF exposure. That's why it's important that we find them and either eliminate them, disconnect them if we can't turn them off. And mostly these days, you can't turn them off.
Do you know the measurement units of what it's
Yeah.
measuring when we're going from 200,000 to 1 million? What is it? What's it
So
measuring?
this is microwatts per meter squared.
Just
Microwatts.
curious. Not
So
that
we're
big.
measuring microwatts.
Yeah.
And different meters can do microwatts per centimeter, microwatts per meter. They can do milliwatts. There's different measurements, but there's also a great thing that you can find online, which takes each measurement and translates it for you. But it's basically, they're all measuring the power density of the electromagnetic field that's coming from anything that's wireless. And sometimes even with a smart meter, sometimes we're finding these signals even on our wiring, because a smart meter, which has a wireless component, also goes into your electrical system of your home. And so sometimes we're finding that these signals combine and these higher frequencies that were never supposed to be on our 60 hertz electrical wiring are now changing those things too. My best advice and the way that I live in the most healthy environment with the EMF is to turn off and not bring any wireless into my own home environment. That really seems to do it for me. Like, I do not have a smart meter. Had that removed right when we moved in. And that seems to really make a difference.
Mhm. I think back to a time, it was 2010, and I was working at the Veterans Affairs Hospital. Maybe it was 2009. It doesn't matter. And I remember there was this doctor that stopped in the room where everyone was charting. And she was from a European country, and she needed to leave early because she was going home to have like energy checked in her house
Oh,
that she
good.
was moving into. And I
Yeah.
was wondering if, especially with your travels, is this common? Is there some version of this checking energy that's common in certain other parts of the world that has been
Now,
around?
do you mean doing an assessment of your home for electromagnetic fields? Or are you talking feng shui energy?
I feel like it was the first.
Okay. Yeah. There's a whole study called flow biology. And in America, we call them building biologists. And I'm actually studying and I've taken several courses to become a building biologist.
Mm.
And within building biology, there are different areas of study. There's air quality, there's water quality, and then there's electromagnetic fields. And they come from both our wiring. Those are called extremely low frequency EMF, and that's electricity and it's magnetic energy. And then there's also the radio frequencies, and that's all the wireless. So there's a whole certification program that's really getting your master's in college. There are thousands of hours that you dedicate to this and tests that you take to certify that you actually know what you're doing. And those are called building biologists. And I have a whole list of them on our site that do come to your home and do an intake. And like I said, they can focus on any of those areas, or you can say, I just really want to get my EMF under control.
Yeah, I remember she said something about how it was very common where she was from, but not
Yeah,
common in the United States. So I'm
right.
not sure. It stuck in my mind and it's still
It could have
bothering me.
been.
I need to go
Yeah.
find out what's going on.
And I think it's not something that everybody does, but I can tell you that the laws are much more stringent, except I think in Finland. I think Finland, wherever Nokia, I think it's started in Finland. It was there's a lot of electromagnetic pollution there too. But in other countries, like in Spain, like we saw, they're very happy with 3G. And I think that,
Do you think that will
you know,
change though?
that
I mean,
eventually will change, right? But I know that like at schools, there are not cell phone towers like there are here.
mm,
It's really thoughtless
mm,
for kids. It really is that we would choose a church or a school to put a cell phone tower on. We know even cell phone towers now have warning signs. And I put that in our article. I showed what these warning signs say. They say, don't be within 3 feet. If they say don't be within 3 feet, it's probably not smart to be within 15 feet if
mm,
you're a child.
yeah.
I think that we're beginning now to understand the seriousness. And I think that the telecom industry is starting to really understand the seriousness of it. And so they're starting to take steps to say, hey, we tried to tell you this wasn't safe.
Yeah. I have not seen this where they put these on buildings, but I don't live in a
You
highly populated area. So,
Yeah, and it's not just on buildings, no, it's actually near the towers themselves, and towers can be right on in neighborhood street blocks,
sure.
and there will be a sign that says, "Warning, high voltage or high electricity or high radio frequencies." And so remember, radio frequencies are the wireless EMF
Mm.
that we need to be aware of.
Yeah. I was actually wondering about those terms, which you mentioned, and thanks for mentioning again. I appreciate it. Okay, so people are going to want to know, can I just get a sticker and put it on my phone and will it take care of things? So you've tested a little bit of this, and that's the only answer I can come up with is you have to have a meter that's good and you have to try it and just see. That's how we figure things out. So
That
tell us what you learned.
that's why I went to the meter, because originally I did. By the way, these chips that go on your phone, they were available in the early 2000s. I think they were even available in the 90s when I first started buying them. And so I tried everything and nothing made a difference. And then the meters confirm that nothing makes a difference. And now many of these chip companies are saying, oh, we don't change the level of EMF. We change the way the wave affects you. Now, some of them have some interesting studies. One that I don't know if this is happening to everybody, if it's just because I'm in this category, that I seriously get a commercial for every day on Instagram or Facebook. And so the
Is it body
recent,
wave?
something like that, body something. And they were talking, is this the one that's talking about the EEG, how it affects your brain?
I think
That
so.
they,
It's a really interesting ad. And I'm like, oh, that's what this ad is for?
yes, yeah, something like that. So of course, because I love research, nothing thrills me like digging into some research. So I looked at the research. And what I've been able to see, and I invite everyone to please read this research from the body chip company that says that this chip has an effect on brain waves, because it says that it increases alpha waves, and alpha waves, as you probably know, we've seen connected to meditation and neurofeedback. We see some rise in it, though that's debated, but I think that it's true. That's something that we see in meditation and biofeedback. So they had first a small study, just 6 people. And then secondly, I've read it a few times because I can't believe this is true. But they take the chip and they put it on your heart for 10 minutes. So they lay this chip on your heart, right? Okay, imagine you've got something on your heart and you do breath work. If you've got something laying on your heart and it's a chip, what are you going to do? Probably going to be aware of it, right? Probably going to breathe a little. And then they take a cell phone and they turn it on and put it to your head for 7 minutes. And then they put the chip on to your body after you've had the cell phone on, and then they do the EEG. And so it makes you think that the chip is on the cell phone, but read the study. The chip was never on the cell phone. The chip is used in conjunction with the cell phone. So I don't really understand exactly what the study is saying, other than maybe when the chip is on your heart, you're going to have an increase in alpha waves. That's what it appears to be. Like I said, I'm not a scientist. I just love to read the research. If I was going to do a review on this, I would actually work with an EMF research scientist, some of the best in the world. And I'd ask them to do a deep dive with me into this study, into all the studies, and see what they're actually saying. Because I did do that with a very popular harmonizer. And basically, all the studies seemed to be either inconclusive or not related to EMF, not related in any way to EMF. But these were the studies that were being used to advertise the product. So what I say about chips is read the research. And if it seems confusing to you at all, ask the company. If I had communication with that company, if I was thinking of buying one, I would say, now tell me, why did you put the chip on the heart and not on the phone, to see what was going to happen when you put the phone up to your head? Doesn't that make sense? That's how you're using it.
Bizarre. Yeah. And you did, I know you did a video online where there was a different company. I can't remember. Their stickers were white and you put them on the phone and you did just measure with the EMF meter. What happened in that one?
Okay, now that one
I'm
actually,
the popular one too. It's really just those
that
two I hear about.
actually did something. That
Yeah.
actually did something. Now that was they have a different method. And what they say this does is it deflects the energy from going on it was on an AirPod, deflects the energy from going into your brain and reflects it outward. Okay. So we did an ambient level and we did around the AirPod. We did on the other side of the AirPod. And we found that there was a reduction, but the meter, this one here, still measured extreme radiation going right into your head. So to me, I said, okay, so it slightly reduced it. Is that good enough for me? No. Is it good enough for me to give to a teenager and say, hey, now you're safe? No. It is definitely not good enough for that.
Yeah.
And that was and that we've done before I video, I usually do 30 or 40 of the exact same tests so that or demonstrations, so that I can see if this is really a trend. And so that's what we had done. And the same thing happened every time. So sometimes the reduction was greater, sometimes it was less, but it had a bit of a reduction, but not
Not
enough.
significant.
And I think the problem with that is, and that, as well as the chips, is that it's a false sense of security. It's, oh, great, I'm good. I'm good. Here, let me slap one of those on, then I'm safe. No, you're not safe, because not only is it not reducing it enough, or maybe not reducing it at all, it depends on which company it is, but also it's not your only source of EMF radiation. It's coming from the Wi-Fi. It's coming from the cell phone tower. It's coming from the wireless environment that's in your home. And those AirPods need your phone to be on. The smartwatch needs your phone to be on to work with it, right? So you need to distance yourself from the radiation. That's the best thing you can do. In fact, I've purchased shields, actual steel shields that you're supposed to put your phone behind, and then it's supposed to be safe. Turned out that just putting my phone 12 feet away was much safer than putting it behind the shield. And then what happens with shields? I don't know if you were going to ask about that next, but clothing and shields. Well, shields have metallic fabric, and metal can actually deflect a radio frequency wave, and also can deflect some electric energy. So you put your cell phone behind one of these, it's a material or a Faraday, and yes, it can stop the radiation, but the radiation doesn't disappear. It doesn't absorb it. There are materials that can absorb it, but it's not these metal fabrics. And anyway, so you put it there, and what happens? It bounces away. And as it bounces away, like I have one where someone sent me a t-shirt, a shielding t-shirt. And I said, no, I've tried these before. Please, I'm not going to, no, try ours. Ours is different. Okay. It was very soft. It was very beautiful. It didn't hurt my skin like some of them do. And I held it up, and the phone was about 6 feet in front of me. And without the phone, we had the radiation being measured. It was, I don't know, it was probably 6 times more once I held the t-shirt up, meaning that if you were standing in front of me, you were going to get 6 times more radiation from the phone that was in front of me than you would have if I didn't have that on. Now, say you're all by yourself. Where else is that radiation going to go? It's going to go to your thyroid. It's going to go to your brain. It's going to go to your eyes. It's going to go to your ears. It's going to go wherever you're not covered. So that's something to deal with when you use anything that has a shield, a phone case, a laptop shield. All of them work the same way. And many people who are sensitive to EMF will tell you that they feel the same thing, that they can actually feel that increase, and they don't use it because they can feel it. There's a big push for beanies, and it seems, oh yeah, great, I'll put a beanie on and then my brain's protected. And the problem is they're not thinking about the reflection. And I've seen on the boards for electrosensitivity people like me that some people will say, hey, I felt really good wearing it, and then I started feeling bad. And then other people say, yes, I understand. This is true. This is exactly what you're saying. This is exactly how I felt. But people who really are sensitive will wear a full suit, like cover head to toe, and then they'll have relief because they're completely covered.
I have to get really weird and ask about about crystals, and people talk
Okay.
about yellow mitigating EMFs and things like that. And you talked about this harmonizer. There was a company who sent me a product, and they wanted me to talk about it and love it. And I
Yes.
just couldn't do it because I'm like, I can't see any benefit. Then I gave it to a clinician friend of mine who was wearing an aura ring because there was a doctor I like online who said her aura
Yes.
score
Yes.
improved. And I was like, I just could not find. And she said, absolutely no difference. And if
Yes.
anything, and it was lit up as a Somavedic. I'm just going to call it out.
Yes.
I try not to
Yes.
here, but I'm just going to mention it. And they like really courted me for a long time. I was like, sorry, I haven't bought my EMF meter, et cetera, et cetera. And she had told me this before, but the conversations are so drawn out. I said, I'm sorry. I tested this. It made no difference. And her email was very strongly worded. It was like, it is not an EMF, whatever. It does blah, blah, blah. And you should use this BICOM device. Do you know what BICOM is?
Yes.
What
I
is
looked
it?
into that. I looked into that with it.
That's what they
Yes.
say is what you're supposed to
Yes.
use.
I looked into it, and I'm trying to remember I wasn't impressed.
Yeah.
But
I bet
I
this
did
is
see
like
that.
most of your life, right? It's all the
Trying
things we
everything.
don't see. It's like all the things you buy. People would say, "How do you afford to do the thing? How do you
Well,
afford this hobby?" You
well,
had to
and
turn it
I
into a
actually
business so you could write it off.
I do want to tell you that I did buy that Somavetic, and that's the harmonizer that I have a 45-minute read on the website where I worked with at least 3 really big experts in the field. And we broke down the science. And we even talked to the CEO of the company and asked him to explain. And so it's all in there. And it turns out that as you were talking about crystals, it has crystals inside. And I purchased 2 of them. The first one I sent back because I was feeling not good. I was feeling much worse. And it was very odd because people who came in said that they were also feeling this really bad sensation. What was going on? And it turned out that particular model, it was green and it was made from radon,
That's the one I have.
radioactive green color. Okay.
Sending it
Put that
back.
away.
I didn't they gave it to me, but I'm like, "You can have
Yeah.
it back now. I don't want this because it like if the
Yeah.
light doesn't turn off, I'm not gonna put it in my bedroom."
Yeah. So anyway, I never did measure the radioactivity on it, but just knowing that it was made from that green glass that even in
Can you
antiques
measure
and
the
they say
radioactivity separately? Is there a different meter for that?
You can measure, sure, there are Geiger counters. And then there's also, they did put on their website a meter that measures negative ions. And then I spoke to the person who makes the meter, that makes the negative ion meter. And I said, "Hey, is this a high reading?" They said, "Oh, yes, that's a very high reading." And I said, "Wow, so this actually does increase negative ions." And he said, "When I see a reading that high, it tells me that there's radioactivity." And I'm like, "Oh, funny. It's made of this radioactive glass." And that was just the green one. Now, the other ones are not made with that kind of glass, but they do have the crystals. And what I've read about crystals, and you can see the research is very thin, but the research that shows that there's any positive influence from a crystal has been shown to be either connected to breathing, meditation, things that you do with a beautiful crystal, right? It gets you in a state where you're just feeling good and happy because it's so beautiful. And many people use them as part of their meditative practice.
Mm.
And it turns out that it's placebo. It's,
As
you
you
can see
describe
it,
that, I'm like, "Oh, that's what I use mountains
right?
for." I use mountains. I actually look at them and really
Right?
get into this
Right?
sensation. We can all
Sure.
cultivate our
Exactly.
sensation. Yeah.
And so also in that article, there's the information about the study and the
Mhm.
conclusions and that it's a placebo effect.
You've
There's a
saved us
lot
so
of
much
things.
money today. That's what we really wanted to know. Hey,
Just,
since you spent all the this is the stuff you aren't necessarily saying online. I tried a lot of products and they were actually all failures.
but I was so excited actually to see any mitigation at all of the energy with the one that we put on the AirPods. But it's just like that our devices are emitting such powerful levels. It's going to take a lot more than that to get it to a safe level, which still hasn't even been proven there is a safe level
Yeah.
because they're finding that just even small exposures are not good. But I can tell you that the worst exposure is the one that's coming from the device that's closest to you.
Mhm.
So just be
Keep it
mindful
simple.
of that. You can just even use, I love my AirTube headsets, but you can use your phone on speaker mode
Mhm.
and get far enough away from it that you're having a really significant decrease in exposure.
And she's talking about these AirTube headsets, and I learned about them years ago, but I finally bought one this year from her website. But they're essentially just a wired headset. She has the adapter, and at the very end, it's like a clear tubing. So it's not like the
Right.
wiring doesn't come straight to your ears. So that's
Exactly.
literally what it is. So she's
It's
wearing the
very
black ones.
analog, right?
Yeah, no, but it was good. And it was very beautiful. I have this pink one. I'm like, oh, this is very nice. Very nice. 'Cause I'm so used to everything being such junk. Right? If you will indulge us before we finish up on some things that actually work. You talked about mesh that you put over your dryer,
Honestly.
washer and dryer and
Yes,
things, but
yes,
some of this is a little bit hard to wrap your brain around. If you could help us
yes.
understand some of these things to reduce our overwhelm in this area.
Okay. So my favorite hack is really sleeping under an EMF canopy. So the canopy looks like mosquito netting. Now, but you have to know that there's no wireless in my home. So the only thing that I'm protecting myself from is the environmental EMF because I live pretty close to a cell phone tower. And they're just everywhere in Dallas. Everyone in Dallas lives pretty close to a lot of environmental
Should
EMF.
move to where I live.
It sounds tempting, actually
Yeah.
really does. So what it does is it allows my body to get into parasympathetic because I'm reducing the level from the environment to almost down to nothing when I'm inside my canopy. But you can't have a canopy and have wireless energy around it because of that reflecting that I was talking about. It's just going to reflect it. Also, everything is best if you can turn the electricity off in your home, or at least turn the electricity off where you're sleeping, in your sleep sanctuary. Just make it safer, make it calm, because there are EMF that comes from the electrical grid, and it's becoming more and more concerning because of all the smart meters. It's really changing what's happening to our home electricity. But the really simple things you can do: charge your phone in another room, turn your phone on airplane anytime you're not using it. Please check my story on phantom airplane mode, because I show you how when it's in airplane and it really isn't. And then also to make sure that you don't have that new backup battery that's in every iPhone now that will turn your phone on even when it's completely powered off. And the screen is off, you've powered off, but the phone is still on, emitting EMF. Please look at that article.
So many things I didn't know about. Thank you.
They're simple. They're easy. Of course, never put your phone in your pocket, in your bra, up to your head. Don't put your laptop on your lap. Try to use a wired system. And this is so fun to be able to hardwire your computer, hardwire your phone, even hardwire into where your Wi-Fi is, the modem. You just use that modem and connect it to a switch, which lets you hardwire several things at the same time. I've got a whole kit that makes it easy to do. That's really the best thing you can do if you have kids or if you're sensitive to it. And if you're sensitive to everything that you learn about on this podcast, on the Stressed Out podcast, because what you're doing is you're allowing your body to stand up against all the toxins when you can relieve a lot of the inflammation or stress from your life.
August, where can people find you online?
TechWellness.com.
TechWellness.com.
Wellness.
I can't help but wonder if Alan, your husband's name is Al or Alan?
Hal.
Hal.
Hal with an H. Halisters, isn't it?
Oh, you never hear that. I've only ever heard that with Hal Elrod. I'm wondering if you guys work together on the wired internet kit, because I feel like that would be his jam.
Oh, totally. Loves it. We have hardwires in every room, but because of him, they're all twisted together nicely, or not twisted, rolled up beautifully. And they all have little twist ties on them that we also sell, that they're little cord keepers to make everything look organized. But he loves it too. He loves that he's able to have a connection that doesn't fade. You never lose a hardwired connection. That's one thing. And it's much safer and it's more private.
Yeah. Cool.
So,
thanks so much for coming on today.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Just keep breaking.